as you mentioned, because of, we got a couple of minutes, and I want to cover a lot of information really quickly, and then we can provide greater detail, after my session. But I wanted to dive in with, just kind of level setting on what are we talking about with transformation. We've been, as you mentioned, we've had hundreds, literally hundreds. We've been part of hundreds of Salesforce transformations. And usually it's fallen into three categories, right? It's either a change in a go-to-market strategy, which could be driven by a new solution set or shifting from, selling products to solutions, or it could be competitive pressure, which is hurting market share or limiting growth, or it's mergers and we're trying to bring multiple organizations in. And so how do we all have one methodology, or it could be a combination. But what I've never seen is this fundamental shift in buyer behavior. It really has changed the landscape. I mean, what we're talking about with AI and the noise in the market and the information, this really is new. Buyers are, less dependent upon sellers, right? And there's all kinds of data supporting that. They really don't want to talk to sellers when evaluating solutions. The number of customers and decision makers that want to work with sellers when evaluating has dropped almost 120% in the last couple of years. They're more distracted, right? Because of the noise. There's just hard to get their attention. Even people, we all have that inbox filled with emails, and we're just difficult working through all of that and getting to the things that we want. And then there's also they're less available, right? Because people are, we're kind of under assault. It's like, because of AI, everything we do highlights something we might need. And so we're deluged with information and people reaching out to us. It's kind of like, I think it's like living in a big city or New York. It's like we're all sort of hiding, because as soon as we peek our head out of the door, we're going to get attacked. So it's just more difficult. And those are all the changes in the buyer behavior. And there is kind of some bad news, good news with that. The bad news is we do have to change the way we sell. The good news is, right, the process that drives transformation doesn't need to change. It still works. And AI is a powerful tool, and it can allow us to be successful. And I think it can facilitate some of the things that we need to do from a transformation perspective, as well as it can take some things off the seller's plate so that they can develop a new set of competencies, which is what I want to talk about first. I want to talk about what needs to change about the way we sell, and then we want to go into the process that will drive transformation and what we've learned over hundreds of transformation initiatives. And then how does AI play a role in that? And I'm not going to get specific to specific recommendations, but I want to walk you through sort of the big checklist that we have, and then we can offer more details post-conference. So, what needs to change about the way we sell? I've identified 4 things, and this is something that we've developed after from working with high performing organizations, high performer sellers, high performer leaders who really are hitting their number and have made the transformation. One is elevate receptivity. This is one of the new capabilities that we need to develop. Elevate receptivity. As we talked about, decision makers are more distracted, less available, less dependent upon sellers, and that equals low receptivity. Well, what does that mean? When people are unreceptive, and it's an emotional state, when they're emotionally unreceptive, the more we try to persuade them, the more closed or unreceptive they become, right? So what we've done is we just kind of amp up the volume and work harder, but that doesn't work, because that's just driving them further away. So when they're unreceptive, the more we try to sell, the more unreceptive they become. So we need to shift and focus on how do we create a fertile soil. So instead of delivering more of the message and trying to focus on just the power of our message, which is the seed, we need to create more receptivity. And that requires a new mindset and a new skill set. We also need to work on moving upstream. And this is something we've talked about for years, but I don't know if it's necessarily people have bought into the need to move upstream. Like, can we really work with buyers? Well, buyers need sellers less and less. Decision makers need trusted partners, because as AI is providing it easier, it's making it easier for buyers to find what they need without sellers, right? But there's still decisions that need to be made. And so if we can earn a seat at the table and we can offer creative solutions and we have the expertise to lead, then we're going to get a seat. But we need to change our messaging. We need to change how we position the meeting. We need to change the channel, learn to leverage new channels to get to the decision maker. Next one is expand discovery. We need to, again, if our goal is not to just be in a fulfillment and sell products, and we need to craft solutions and unique solutions and provide expertise to help decision makers solve problems, we need to expand our discovery from a seller-centric discovery framework. We're finding out needs and we're finding out what their decision drivers are. And we want to know who the economic buyer is. And we want to know, what the KPIs. Those things are important. And we need those, but we need to expand it to be more of how do we conduct an assessment, an organizational assessment, so we can provide value. Then lastly, we need to change beliefs, right? If people are going to make a dramatic shift in how they think about us and how they think about our solution, and if they're going to invite us into to the rooms where decisions are made, we're going to have to learn how to change beliefs. And it's a higher level of influence. And it requires not just communicating a business case, but how do we get them to emotionally experience the benefits? How do we get them to emotionally see what we're trying to offer? And so again, that requires some advanced skills. So we can talk more about that, but I wanted to lay that framework because that helps us understand what's required when we move into our transformation journey. So let's dive into that. So there's 3 stages to a transformation journey, or at least this is how we framed up how to help an organization move from where the organization or the reps or the leaders are unconsciously incompetent to a new habits form, and they've learned the capabilities and they don't have to think about it. They've mastered it. So, and there's 6 stages, but the beginning is they're unconsciously incompetent to they've mastered it. There's a new habit. And so they don't have to work on it anymore. Prepare, ignite, transform. Prepare is where we begin the journey, right? Where we start will ultimately determine probably where we end up. And this is certainly true in a transformation journey. So how do we prepare to make the journey? What needs to happen before the launch? Ignite. This is where the magic happens. This is where we ignite the desire to change. And this is the primary objective of the ignite stage. This is where we have workshops, events, we get people together and we get them to understand and embrace the need to change. And it also ignites the skill development process. And then lastly, this is where the work happens. This is where transform is where we drive lasting change, right? This is where the heavy lifting. Most organizations stop at ignite. Scores are great. People give you good feedback. You feel good if it goes well. It feels like we've accomplished our goal. No, we're 50% there. If we stop here, we won't see the change. To sustain it and to drive change, we need to focus on transform. And let's unpack each one of these, and I'll share some best practices of what we learned over the years. And again, I'm going to provide a checklist that's going to highlight more details for each one of the elements that I'm about to talk about. So assessment. When you start prepare, you need to start the journey at the front line. What is happening on the front line? And there's 3 elements to an assessment. We want to find out what is the barrier to change. What is keeping them? And I am a big proponent of, when you conduct assessments, is to focus on a small subset, not try to send out a mass survey of everybody in the organization, but work with 5 to 10 representative reps and leaders from each unique sales organization. And that's an important distinction. So I think of each unique sales organization, they have the different roles, different objectives, they sell different solutions. But if you work with a subset of 5 to 10, what we found over the last 3 decades is that that is representative of the sales force, and go deeper with a few than go wide with a survey that typically doesn't reveal as much information as it will when you focus on a small subset. So we want to identify, what are the barriers to change? How do they feel about the organization? What's their mindset? What's their values? What do they think about? Is it the company's fault that change isn't happening? Are they engaged? All the questions that you can find out in focus groups. Capabilities gap. The next thing we want to look at is capability gap. And I want to highlight the need to focus on capabilities, not all of the skills and techniques and all of the tips and tricks that people will focus on in selling. There's just a handful of capabilities. More organizations probably need anywhere from 4 to 8 capabilities. And these are the building blocks of performance, and they're all measurable. I don't have time to go into all of those now, but you want to focus on, what are the things that drive results that you can measure. For example, discovery. Discovery is a capability. It's a one-to-one capability versus a strategic capability. And so, okay, if you look at discovery, it can be measured by, what does the customer reveal? If there's certain outcomes that you're looking for in discovery, you can measure whether the customer revealed that or not. So that's an example of one capability. So focus on capabilities, and in order to do that and measure it, you need to be able to observe. The next thing you want to look at is coaching cadence. And this is super important. And coaching, we define as, you're observing sellers in the field, or you're observing leaders, whoever the change initiative is focused on. You're observing, then you're coaching, meaning there's an alignment meaning, and then there's development that occurs, meaning there's practice. Coaching is not a conversation. So this is the reason I highlight this, and it made it on the checklist, is because when we talk about coaching, people say, oh, our people meet with their reps, or they meet with their team and on a consistent basis, and then they'll fill it in and say once or twice a week. No, most of the time what's happening is they haven't coached them maybe in months. So it needs to include practice. Now, I'm going to highlight some specific areas as we go through this that identify where AI can play a role. Capability gaps. Because of what's happening with simulations, I've been researching and looking at what ChatGPT mobile can do and how you can move from text to voice. It's amazing to see what simulations can be created. So that can be leveraged to determine capability gaps. More importantly, I think at this stage, though, through conversational intelligence, it can help you identify what's happening, as long as you're getting some recorded calls or recorded meetings. We're working with a large organization right now, and they've got 750,000 calls recorded on Gong. And so it's so easy to leverage that conversational intelligence to be able to see how long they're speaking, what are the gaps, what's the sentiment analysis. They can conduct sentiment analysis. And so that's very helpful in capabilities assessment. Alignment. 3 elements. So once we've gone through the assessment, now we want to have an alignment meeting. And so what happens here? The first thing we need to answer is, why change? There's 2 options. It's either about the organization needs to be more successful, or it needs to be about how can we better serve the customer. There's got to be a hero of the story, and it's either the customer or it's the company. And my strong recommendation is, the why change needs to be built around the customer, and they need to be the hero of the story. And how can we help them solve their problems? And that's really critical if we want to drive receptivity with both the reps and the customers. Decisions. The decisions need to be made related to objectives and what you're going to measure, how you're going to, what are you going to prioritize? So that obviously that's pretty intuitive. And then the last element of alignment is the senior leadership's role in driving sustainment. This is one of the number one barriers we've seen in transformation, is that the senior leaders are, and if you're a senior leader, then you don't have to worry about it. But if you're trying to drive an initiative, and and you are not the most senior person in the organization that's responsible for the outcome, you've got to get all the key stakeholders involved, and they need to understand their role in driving transformation, because if you don't get them involved early and they don't see the x-rays that came from assessments, they're not going to buy into what has to happen in transformation, because transformation's hard. And that's a key kind of pro tip that I'll share is when you're having an alignment meeting with the senior leadership, you want to actually show them transcripts, show them exactly what's happening in the field, and that will motivate them to make the investment, whether it's time or money, and what needs to happen to drive transformation. And I want to highlight why change, because that is the most important element of alignment. Customization. So 3 elements of customization: develop resources, examples, and labs, which is practice per role. And I just want to highlight per role. So if you're driving a transformation and you're developing content, or whatever you're developing to communicate what change needs to happen, a common mistake we see is that they don't develop it per role. They kind of lump everybody together and say, because it's easy, this is our content, this is what we want them to do, but it needs the examples, and everything you develop needs to be per role. Then you validate and then integrate it into CRM. Instead of posters and all kinds of cards and information that we want to put up, what we want them to do is we want them to fill in the boxes in the CRM, whatever they're using. If we've got them using CRM and entering in the information, then they're going to be connected to what needs to happen. If you want to drive change, have people fill in the boxes. Back to discovery. If there's certain elements you want them to uncover in every meeting, after that meeting, they fill in the boxes. Now, AI can facilitate that, but it needs to happen to drive change. Again, there can be resources or tools from AI that will help you customize the program and come up with examples and identify specific calls that you can use in training. All right, let's move to Ignite. So this is some sort of event or workshop. And again, this is very important because of the first E in the workshop, which is embrace, which this is the most critical element of really the Ignite process. Is how do we get people to understand the need to change? If they don't embrace the need to change and why we're doing what we're doing, then they're not going to change. This is one of the shortcomings of AI, right? We can create simulations, we can provide information, but we can't address the heart. And if people are resistant to change, we've got to connect with them at a human level to unlock what's the barrier to change. And then they can experience what the change looks like in their role, again, by role, and then execute and practice it. And again, we're just igniting the skill development. We're going to complete it and transform, but this is the sort of the core elements of a workshop. And then measure what happened in the event. And here's a couple of benchmarks I wanted to share. Content. You want to measure, and there's a lot of different subcategories of how you measure content. But one of the key things is, if you just roll it all up, is that they rate the content at least a 4.5 out of 5. 4.5 out of 5. That should be the minimum. Delivery should be 4.75 plus. Your NPS score should be 65 plus. And this is one of the things we've seen. There's a drop in NPS, Net Promoter Score, when we moved fully from on-site to virtual. Virtual does work. Virtual training does work, but the NPS scores dropped. The delivery scores didn't drop as much, and the content scores didn't drop as much, but the NPS score does. And I think that's the best indicator for the success of an event. The other thing we also look at is their self-reported or self-rated skill improvement. I started the workshop here. Before the event, I felt I rated myself, again, at Discovery at a 2.5, and now I rated it a 4. And so you look at that percentage increase, it should be at least over 35%. So those are some benchmarks that can help you determine how successful the event. Well, let's go to the last section and talk about transform. This is where the real work real work occurs. Comprehend, apply, and master. So comprehend, what we want to do is develop the micro learnings for each discipline. So we talked about capabilities. Well, how do you ensure you're capable? Well, there's a subset of disciplines that drive a capability. So you want to build all your micro learning around those disciplines. And that's something that will help drive comprehension. And it needs to be almost like a vending machine. It's learner led. I need to know more about discovery. I need to know a little more about asking questions. I need to know more about how to respond to objection. Those are disciplines. And so we build our micro learning around that. Then we need to assess, do they have the knowledge? AI can help with that. There's some amazing AI tools that can help with that. Apply. This is, again, more learner led. Here, we're going to provide everything that they need to be successful in their role. These are where we can offer productivity tools, which takes the burden of research and importing information. It makes us much more efficient, which allows us more time to learn. And there's a lot of AI tools that can help with that. Then there's sales enablement resources organized by capabilities and disciplines. The last piece is master. Now, master, obviously, the benefit of master is probably pretty intuitive. If we master the capability, we're going to obviously drive results. But there's another element. It also drives engagement. If people don't feel like they master or competent, their engagement plummets. And so they need to feel like they're good at what they're doing. So the most important element is that we got to certify the frontline leaders to drive engagement and coach, right? And then we need to diagnose what the gaps are, then develop. We can develop one-to-one, we can develop in teams, we can develop in cohorts. All of those elements need to be in place, and then measure in 4D. 4D, results, desire, productivity, and capability. We don't want to most organizations measure in 2D, results and productivity or KPIs. We need to be able to look at both the desire, productivity, and capability. And then here are all of the areas where AI can help drive, transform, and support transform.